Hello and welcome. I'm Austin Kowarczyk, arranger and composer, and today I'd like to discuss with you one of my all-time favorite pieces for wind band. This piece is monumental in the wind band repertoire, widely considered one of the best written works available, with huge scoring, brilliant counterpoint, and a true mastery of the timbres and textures available to the wind band. In my mind, and the minds of many others, there is no competition for Percy Grainger's Lincolnshire Posy. Commissioned by the American Bandmasters Association in 1936, Grainger was tasked with writing a piece for the concert band, which was eventually to be premiered on March 7, 1937, by the Milwaukee Symphonic Band from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Grainger's response to this commission would come in the form of a 6-movement suite, with each movement based on a song Grainger had collected in his 1906 trip to Lincolnshire, England. These 6 movements, though based around separate songs, were intended by Grainger to be, and I quote, a kind of musical portrait of the singer who sang its underlying melody, a musical portrait of the singer's personality no less than his habits of song, his regular or irregular interpretations of the rhythm, his preference for gaunt or ornately arabesqued delivery, his contrasts of legato and staccato, his tendency towards breadth or delicacy of tone. The whole suite is underlined by one thing in my mind: Grainger's complete use of almost everything the wind band has to offer, in terms of instrumentation especially. The full instrumentation is as follows: piccolo, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, English horn, E-flat clarinet, 3 B-flat clarinets, alto clarinet, bass clarinet, 2 bassoons, contrabassoon, B-flat soprano saxophone, 2 E-flat alto saxophones, B-flat tenor saxophone, E-flat baritone saxophone, B-flat bass saxophone, 3 B-flat trumpets, 4 F horns, 2 tenor trombones, bass trombone, B-flat baritone, euphonium, tuba, string bass, timpani, snare drum, suspended cymbal, crash cymbal, bass drum, and tuneful percussion, also known as mallet or keyboard percussion. This massive listing of 41 or more instruments is expertly manipulated through the almost 15-minute runtime of the suite. From bassoons and trumpets to piccolo and alto clarinets, Grainger's combination of instruments means that the stropic form of each movement, or single melody that was repeated constantly through the movement, is constantly fresh, interesting, and uniquely noticeable. Let's take a look at some examples. In Lisbon, the first movement, Grainger opens the suite with a mixture of muted trumpets, a single stopped horn, and bassoon, playing the simple, lilting 6/8 melody that we'll hear for the whole movement. This melody is a quick 18-measure jaunt, and many, including myself, would leave this already... And while many, including myself at times, would leave this already interesting orchestration to stand on its own, Grainger, of course, introduces the soprano and alto saxophones for an accent for less than a measure, teasing the introduction of all of the woodwinds a few short measures later. The second movement, Horksto Grange, is considered easily one of the best examples of Grainger's unrivaled skill in wind band orchestration to this day, and would probably need its own hour to 2-hour-long video just to explain how genius it is. So let's move on. The third movement is honestly the one I want to highlight the most in this situation. That is because there are 2 separate versions of it, both orchestrated differently, but both come together after a certain point in the score. Both versions feature 2 melodies that chase each other orchestrated in pairs, along with an extended solo in the middle of the different sections. Version A has a piccolo and first clarinet on the melody, while the E-flat and bass clarinets play the chasing melody that follows after it, and a muted trumpet, or flugelhorn and cornet, according to Grainger's notes, it features the solo. Now, this in itself is very good, a wonderful example of the power of a wind band and the instruments inside of it. But this isn't the preferred version. No. Version B is the version that Grainger requests be played, but only if your players are good enough. This first melody again features piccolo, but this time paired with the alto clarinet, a unique pairing in itself. The chasing melody is this time played on oboe and bassoon. However, the true star of the show here is the soprano saxophone solo. Grainger writes in his notes, "If you have a soprano saxophonist who can play the solo from bar 19 to bar 46 loudly, piercingly, feelingly, and vibratingly, use version B. If not, this solo may be played on flugelhorn, or trumpet or cornet, in which case use version A." The incredible complexity and difficulty of playing this movement, for those who are unfamiliar with it, is actually what led to this movement not being performed in the premiere in 1937, along with the 5th movement. Speaking of the 5th movement, while I'd love to break down every movement and every choice Grainger makes in his orchestration, this video would be ridiculously long. So I'll highlight I'll highlight another fascinating aspect of Grainger's masterwork. For those of you who are unaware, which I imagine is many, Percy Grainger holds this fascination with the concept of free music, or music that isn't constrained by certain boundaries or restrictions. Towards the end of his life, he would focus on this much more, going so far as dabbling in electronic music and computer music. Strange to think about, but a fascinating aspect of his career nonetheless. But this inclination was clear in his work throughout his life. Specifically, I want to discuss the start of the fifth movement in Lincolnshire Posy, titled Lord Melbourne. This movement opens in free time, where each note, marked with an arrow, is a downbeat given by the conductor. Grainger in his notes writes, "The band leader should vary his note lengths with that rhythmic elasticity so characteristic of English folk singers." This free time concept appears a number of times throughout the movement and creates a unique situation where the interpretation of the movement is highly encouraged to vary from performance to performance. This concept is fascinating to me and a clear sign of a mature composer who knows what he's looking for in this kind of unpredictability in his writing. Cap this entire suite off with a brilliantly scored and energetic sixth movement, and you have one of the most incredible suites of music written for the wind band. I hope this very cursory glance into one of my favorite pieces of music by one of my favorite composers has been interesting. Studying scores like this to help understand what I enjoy most about this music really helps my writing in itself, and has hopefully helped you understand this great piece of work just a little bit better. I've been Austin Kolarczyk, arranger and composer, and that's all. So, thanks. I'll see you next time.